Here we go. Fireside chat. We got Tumas from Rogo, who is actually an employee of Lazard. He's going to tell you more about that, but not really. Here we go. Quick intro, Tumas. Go for it.
Hey, I'm Tumas. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of Rogo. We've been doing a lot of really interesting things using LLMs with, and helping using LLMs to help bankers and people in private equity, all sorts of other, smaller and more interesting places inside finance. Some specific types of hedge funds and so on. And it's been pretty awesome. We've been able to, work with people like Lazard and other really large financial institutional firms to do that.
Excellent. All right. So we're going to kind of just take one step back because I love this stuff. So help the audience understand a knowledge graph. What is it? How does it relate to creating the first, your words collectively, right, AI analyst on Wall Street? And walk us through an example, like a case study or a for example of connecting the dots between Rogo, knowledge graph, and Wall Street firms becoming 100 times more productive. Go.
Sure. Look, so a lot of finance, and historically, it's always been like an apprenticeship. There's a lot of institutional knowledge, right? They're like Sith lords, right? The master and apprentice, right? And you always have to learn a bunch of things specifically about your domain for any specific type of industry, for anything like that. And additionally, like part of that also goes into the data engineering side of this, right? So what we did is we built, companies change all of the time. There's these things called security masters. So one of our data engineers, who's like ex-Citadel, along with other people, we have a lot of ex-quants on our team. They built, a security master, which is basically keeps track of what securities are what, make sure that when you say Maple Bear, you actually mean Instacart, and all of these different things. It made it much more semantic, made it much more available for large language models to do that. So atop that security master, we realized, hey, we're so good at identifying what you mean whenever you mean energy drink companies. We know we have such great intelligence about understanding semantic intent and how it maps to specific companies that then we realized, wait a second, this is incredible. This is probably the best way to access different parts and different types of entities, different types of nodes on a knowledge graph, right? So what we started to do is we started expanding it, right? Whenever you find a company, we'll find all of their latest funding rounds. We'll find any type of acquisitions that they've done. And then from those acquisitions, you're able to traverse the graph of different types of relationships companies do. If Wall Street is anything, it's really just a bunch of relationships between a bunch of companies, and advisors like Lazard and other large financial institutions are really the people in between. So understanding all of those different relationships is so key and important. And when it comes down to making an AI analyst, that's literally it, right? It's just being able to understand those relationships.
I love that answer. And let's go a little bit deeper. So Wall Street's first AI analyst, I mentioned to you before we jumped in here, right? PowerPoint creation. Like I loved how specific you guys were because we've all been there in different roles in corporate America of how much time we spend and how difficult it can be sometimes when you're a young person early in your career and trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and there's just so much work that feels just tedious, right? And I'm not learning so much, but I'm paying my dues and I'm doing my thing. So can you walk us through an example of PowerPoint workflow and the way you all have thought about that in relation to what you've built and what you're building?
Totally. So a way to sort of think about PowerPoint generation is honestly an entirely different modality than what a lot of people think LLMs are, right? Typically right now LLMs generate text, sometimes images, sometimes video, and there are a lot of general PowerPoint creators. And at the end of the day, banking PowerPoints are very specific. There's again a lot of institutional knowledge there. It's another one of these things where if you don't do it the exact way your partner likes to do it or the MD likes to do it, it's not going to be okay, and you're going to be staying up till 3 a.m. doing it and making it right. And on the other side of it, PowerPoints at the end of the way are also a really good short form way to tell a story, right? And finance is the study of what is something worth, right? A PowerPoint is probably the most condensed, information-rich way to present a story of how something has value. And ultimately, that's sort of what we've been trying to model, using a lot of experts in finance. Basically, if you aren't super technical at Rogo, you've had to work in finance, you've had to work in investment banking. We have a lot of people from Blackstone and other private equity firms, or you've had to work at hedge funds. And so we're able to basically build an incredibly rich set of preferences of being able to gauge whether this PowerPoint is better than this other PowerPoint, making sure it fits and gets the exact type of output that really saves you midnights of work.
I love that. And let me play something back to you. You tell me if I'm picking up what you just put down there properly. So if I'm one of 15 managing directors and each of us have our own slightly different style, and some slightly difference might be more than slightly different, am I to understand that that's where Rogo is going to learn rather quickly all those unique characteristics and the way I like to tell stories, the type of data I prioritize, that whole kit and caboodle? Is that what we're getting into here? Is that it learns rather quickly and enables that type of almost personalization or customization?
I mean, think about it this way. Whenever you try making AI systems, you kind of want to model how people would do it normally, right? And the normal way people make PowerPoints on Wall Street is they find precedent decks. If you build a good AI system, it's going to learn from examples pretty quickly, right?
Yep.
In fact, it's a pretty bad AI system it does. And the other thing is that, traditionally people have tried making PowerPoint automation tools with UiPath or a bunch of rule-based systems, and they never really worked. And the reason why is that this new modality of AI allows you to be a lot more flexible. When little things don't, quite work, it still somewhat figures it out. Different types of intentions. Finding the right logo happened to be like something really interesting we started working on. Anthropic is a lot like anthropology. And finding the right logo is honestly like a ton of work in finding a PowerPoint, especially if you have like a bunch of logos on a PowerPoint. That can save you hours of time, and we'll just be able to find them. We have a lot of good computer vision verification. Going back to the company knowledge graph, right? What do we store? We store really good PowerPoint-friendly logos with every single company we identify, right? So it's this really good, powerful tool that we built on top of.
I love it. I love it. So another line that really caught my attention inside your recent fundraising announcement, and congrats on that, it's awesome. Really smart and amazing investors you guys have, was this idea of I'm gonna look at my notes real quick as I butcher this. Bankers need more than just a chat bot, right? So if you're talking to, and there's a lot of them in my network and followers and what have you, as we talked about previously, the finance folks in my network that are really smart and they've done great things, but they're not technical, right? So they might think chatbot is a chatbot, right? And so on and so forth. So how do you help them better understand what you mean by the idea that bankers don't need another chatbot? So maybe what is a chatbot in the general sense? And then how are you guys different? And I know that, but I'm going to lay it up for you, right? And then kind of go down that path a little bit, because I think there's some people in my network that would love to hear the answer to that question.
Well, I think the way to think about it is you don't want to have a chatbot for every single point application. I don't want to have a chatbot for an Excel plugin I have. I don't want to then go to my expert interview platform and then have a chatbot there. I want to have one generalized place that can hook in with my private data and connect all of my private data to anything public, any type of acquisition, any type of knowledge that you have publicly about a company, whether it's private or actually traded publicly, and to have that be a centralized platform there. So what we do is we take in any type of data your firm has. Oftentimes it's unstructured or it's structured, and what we'll do is we'll link it to our knowledge graph, right? And that's like, it sort of builds on top of each other. And what that does is this allows us to be able to be an AI interface for all sorts of different parts of your application. One of the ways that we have users interact with it is our chat application. But there is another thing. I think this actually requires us to explain our stack a little bit, right? Yep. Our stack is basically 4 parts, right? Our tech stack. Bottom layer is the data stack, right? That's part of us linking, crawling, doing a lot, building like a really, really powerful financial search engine. On top of that is actually our search stack, like actually executing and all of the indexing that we do, building the knowledge graph, the AI native security master, and so on. On top of that is our chat stack, right? Every time you search, chat, every time you ask a question, we might search for information. This is basically the very common request response type of chat you get from ChatGPT. And on top of that is the actual agential level work. That's where we're actually generating PowerPoints. We're thinking, how do we use the basic knowledge that we treat a Rogo chat response as a unit of work, and how can we build other things on top of that to be able to fully automate your work end to end?
That's a killer answer, and I'm so glad that you framed it that way, because I think that will help that side of the collective audience and followers better understand that bit. So here comes the Peter Thiel question, as we talked about, right? So what's kind of one thing within the world of AI that you believe that perhaps a lot of people wouldn't necessarily agree with you, and why?
One thing I think a lot of people have, rather interesting notions, and this is what RAG became. But the entire idea was I have some data, some files. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run an embedding model on those files. Maybe it's a super fine-tuned one I've been working on. Maybe it's not. And what I'll do is I'll take the embeddings, and which are vector representations of text, and I'm going to try to take my question. I might generate a hypothetical document, whatever, and then I'll find relevant documents that are like it this way, and then I'll return them. And to some extent, this works, right? Like we have an embedding model, we do embedding search as well, but we found that it's not actually that good. And fundamentally, the reason why, when we looked at it, and fun fact, embeddings are technically reversible if you can solve a convex optimization problem, but if you take an embedding, it compresses far too much information, ultimately. And the one thing that you can kind of think about doing instead is realizing, well, if an embedding really is just like the semantic representation of text in a vector, the thing that really understands text better than anything else, the best machine, is honestly the attention layers inside an LLM. So how can you start working around using the internal levels of attention to actually, and using the actual way that these LLMs work, and harnessing the actual attention layers to be able to use that as a search space instead for your files. And now what this means is that it's going to cost you a lot of VRAM on NVIDIA GPUs, but you can actually coordinate and make a really, really successful searches across attention space. And that's been incredibly successful for us. So that's been the one way thing that when people ask what do you think about AI that other people think is totally wrong, I think it's that embeddings I don't think are the best way to go.
We're going to have to go deeper on that next time, Tumas. I appreciate the time. Rogo, for anybody checking this out, you got to go check them out. They're doing amazing things, and thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Take care.